Welcome to Part 3. In the first two parts, we looked at three Bonds: Connery, Lazenby, and Moore. Connery had 6 outings, with the fifth film and the final film being separated by Lazenby's solo effort. Moore topped Connery with 7 outings, making him the Bond actor who starred in the most films. Here is what we have learned to expect. These don't happen in every film, but often enough that they have become part of the formula. Bond wins. This is a no-brainer. Bond escapes from a doomed base. A lot of baddies have a base, some quite ludicrous, like inside a volcano or on a space station. Bond is using a vehicle at the end, usually a ship or boat. Bond is with the girl at the end. Whoopee ensues, either overt or implied. As I summarize each film, and there will be some spoilers, but not every detail of the film, I will look at the following: the baddie, the scheme, the girl, how Bond wins, the ending. We will start off with a non-canon outing. Due to certain rights issues with Blofeld and Spectre, along with the plot of Thunderball, Kevin McClory was able to produce his own Bond film using those elements, and while it features James Bond and sees Sean Connery return as the character, it is in its own universe, unrelated to previous Bond films. Although this is not considered canon, it coincidentally does push Connery's overall total to 7 Bond films, matching Moore's number. Here is 1983's Never Say Never Again. The baddie. It had been a while since Blofeld was in a Bond film. An unnamed faceless version appeared at the beginning of For Your Eyes Only in 1981, mainly as a middle finger to Kevin McClory, and Connery had faced off against Blofeld last in Diamonds Are Forever in 1971. Or did he? There were so many body doubles, who can say? But here in 1983, we have Blofeld, played by Max von Sydow, with cat and all. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, much like his similarly well-coiffed appearances in From Russia with Love and this film's previous incarnation, Thunderball. But then Blofeld liked pulling strings from the shadows. The main antagonist for Bond, however, is billionaire businessman and Spectre's number 1, Maximilian Largo. He is played by Klaus Maria Brandauer. Interestingly, the unseen Blofeld with hair in From Russia with Love and Thunderball was also called Number 1, which here designates Spectre's most senior agent, but not the actual head. This film is not canon, but could it be that the unseen Number 1 from those films was not actually Blofeld? The scheme. Largo is to facilitate the theft of 2 nuclear warheads from cruise missiles at an American military base in England. Spectre then intends to demand billions of dollars from NATO in exchange for their return. Just a simple nuclear money grab. A dime a dozen plot, really. See it every other day. The girl. Domino is Largo's lover. She is also the sister of the drug-addicted USAF pilot used by Spectre to steal the warheads and swap them for dummies. Domino is played by Kim Basinger. How Bond wins. Bond finds a way to get between Largo and Domino by informing her that her brother is dead, his death having been ordered by Largo. Later, while searching for the warheads aboard Largo's yacht, the Flying Saucer, Bond is captured and imprisoned. Largo, now knowing that Domino planned to betray him, will sell her to wealthy Arabs. Bond escapes and rescues her. One warhead is found in Washington, D.C. and defused, and the other warhead is on Largo's yacht. Bond and Largo fight underwater as Largo flees with the armed warhead. Bond manages to disarm the weapon and Domino ends Largo with a spear gun to avenge her brother's death. The ending. After the dust has settled, Bond and Domino kiss by a pool, Bond pausing to wink at the camera as credits begin to roll. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? No, they're not. If so, is it on water? Well, there is no vehicle, so while they are near a pool full of water, this is a no. Is there whoopee? There soon will be, I'd imagine, so yes, impending. Now we go back to Eon Productions and another canon film. Timothy Dalton takes over the role of James Bond in 1987's The Living Daylights. This is the last film to have a title written by Ian Fleming until the reboot in 2006. The baddie. We have a tag team this time. The main baddie is Georgy Kozkov, a Soviet general played by Jerwin Krab. Aiding him is American Brad Whitaker, an arms dealer. He is played by Joe Don Baker. The scheme. Kozkov fakes an assassination attempt, and with Bond's help, he also fakes defection to the West, where he tries tricking MI6 into eliminating the new head of the KGB. Kozkov has been stealing Soviet government funds, and the new KGB boss wants to put a stop to this. Kozkov wants the money to buy lots of opium, sell it in the U.S. to generate profits, with which he will buy arms from Whitaker. All of this is in service of Soviet interest in Afghanistan, as Kozkov sees things. This plot to sell opium products in the U.S. is similar to Kananga's plot in Live and Let Die, via his persona as Mr. Big. The girl. The assassin who faked the attempt on Kozkov's life is actually his girlfriend, Kara Milovi. She is actually a cellist and played along with Kozkov's plans without really understanding what she was doing. She doesn't even know how to use a weapon. Kara is played by Miriam Dabo. How Bond wins. While Bond and Kara have gotten close, Kozkov is still able to trick her into drugging Bond, leading to his capture. Kozkov then betrays Kara, imprisoning her with Bond. They are able to escape, fully uncovering Kozkov's plans along the way. Bond and Kara wind up on an airplane carrying the opium, and a bomb that Bond planted. Whoops! And Bond is forced into taking off with all of this deadly cargo. Bond is able to get the bomb off the plane and escape the plane with Kara as it crashes and explodes, destroying the drugs. Bond takes out Whitaker with finality, and Kozkov is arrested by the new KGB head, presumably to meet his end off screen. The ending. After Kara performs in Vienna, and Bond saves her from an attempt on her life, he meets her in her dressing room where they embrace. They kiss as the camera dollies away, and just off screen, Kara moans, "Oh, James." Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? No, they are in a dressing room at a concert hall in Vienna. If so, is it on water? Nope, no water to be seen, no vehicle, nothing. Is there whoopee? I will say yes. It is off-screen, so it is implied or impending. This is very similar to the type of endings we had in most Connery outings. Dalton had only one more turn as Bond, License to Kill, in 1989. As hinted earlier, this is now the first film not to have a title created by Ian Fleming. The baddie. Robert Davi plays Latin American drug lord Franz Sanchez. He is extremely powerful, ruthless, and sadistic, and has a lot of underlings, including some authorities who are in his pocket. The scheme. Sanchez's scheme is basic drug smuggling, typical for a drug lord and not the kind of nefarious plan Bond usually thwarts. Sanchez employs scientists who have developed a technique to dissolve cocaine in gasoline, as well as reverse the process to recover the narcotics. so he can sell his drugs as fuel to his customers. This makes the drugs undetectable and easy to smuggle. Bond's involvement is largely vengeance, as early in the film Sanchez is responsible for the maiming of Bond's friend, Felix Leiter, and killing his new wife. Leiter is played by David Hedison. Bond knows him from Leiter's days in the CIA and was best man at the wedding. Leiter moved to the DEA, where he came into conflict with Sanchez. The girl. Well, we have two, one secondary and one main. The secondary girl is Lupe Lamora, Sanchez's girlfriend. She develops feelings for Bond. Lupe is played by Talisa Soto. The main girl is Pam Bouvier, Army pilot and DEA informant, played by Carrie Lowell. How Bond wins. Bond resigns from MI6 in order to seek revenge against Sanchez, becoming a rogue agent and having his license to kill revoked. Bond follows lots of clues, going here and there, taking out people involved with the attack on Leiter and Sanchez's drug organization. He teams up with Bouvier, gets assistance from Lupe and Q, who drops by, and eventually seeks employment with Sanchez as an assassin. Ironic. Bond gains access to Sanchez's base of operations, setting it on fire and destroying it. He later takes out 3 of 4 tankers filled with the cocaine-gasoline mixture. Bond and Sanchez fight aboard the 4th tanker, which crashes. Soaked with fuel, Sanchez tries attacking Bond again, only for Bond to pull out the lighter given to him by Leiter. Leiter's lighter, if you will, as a thank you for being best man. Bond uses the lighter to set Sanchez on fire, and Sanchez stumbles toward the wrecked 4th tanker and explodes along with it. The ending. At a party hosted by Lupe, M contacts Bond and offers to reinstate him as a 00 agent. Lupe approaches Bond, but he turns down her romantic offer and leaps from a balcony to splash down into a pool next to Bouvier. He pulls her into the water, where they embrace and kiss, as the camera pans over to a winking fish sculpture. Again with the camera moving away from the action. Is Bond with the girl? Yes. Are they using a vehicle? No, no vehicles allowed at this party. If so, is it on water? Strangely, they are not on water, but in water. So I will give this one a yes, even without a vehicle. Is there whoopee? There is kissing, so I would imagine whoopee will follow. It is pretty public, being at a party and all, but I will give this a yes for impending whoopee. With the end of the Dalton era, one thing comes to mind. Both of his adversaries had schemes involving drugs. We've seen drugs as an integral part of the baddie's scheme before in the Bond franchise, back in Roger Moore's first outing, Live and Let Die. Prime Minister Kananga, through his alter ego as Mr. Big, was planning to give away heroin produced from his opium farms in an effort to enslave drug-addicted masses in the USA and extort money by driving out competition and raising drug prices afterwards. This, on its face, did not seem like the type of scheme Bond usually dealt with. Later in Moore's run, we saw nuclear weapons, megalomaniacs bent on global annihilation, and international extortion. Live and Let Die was leaning heavily into the blaxploitation genre of films that were popular at the time. The Living Daylights had a corrupt Soviet general selling drugs to fund military activities, which sounds similar to the basic beats of the Iran-Contra affair during the Reagan administration, blended with the Just Say No campaign taking place as part of America's war on drugs, happening at the same time. With License to Kill, we see international intrigue and espionage vanish completely, as Dalton's Bond goes on a personal vendetta against a drug lord. This sounds like it was also influenced by Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign against drug use in America, as the aforementioned war on drugs was a big part of the Reagan-Bush senior years in the 1980s and 1990s. In fact, License to Kill feels like an extension of Miami Vice in a lot of ways, which was a very popular TV show around that time. Just as the Cold War and the space race were always in the background during Connery's run, social issues of the day colored Dalton's outings. He had only 2 films, so we will never know what other tales could have been told with his Bond. But what we got feels very 80s. Art imitates life, I suppose? Or maybe it's just me. What do you think? Am I off base? Are there other films in the Bond franchise that seem tied to issues of the day? Let me know in the comments. I know a lot of things from the books were changed massively. Speaking of the books, it was in the novel Live and Let Die where Felix Leiter was mauled by a shark in the line of duty. The event in License to Kill was borrowed from there. If you can spot anything else that was borrowed or shifted between novels and films, leave a comment as well. I would love to read them. Let's put Dalton behind us and move on to the next actor to play Bond, Pierce Brosnan. After a 6-year wait, Bond returned in 1995's GoldenEye. This was the first Bond film to use completely original material and nothing written by Ian Fleming. The Baddie. This time out, we have a trio of notable villains. The mastermind behind it all is none other than 006, Alec Trevelyan. Starting off as Bond's fellow agent and close friend, he fakes his death and creates a criminal organization called Janus. He is played by Sean Bean. Aiding him is Boris Grishenko, a highly talented computer programmer played by Alan Cummings. Capping off our threesome is Zinnia Onatop. Onatop? Onatop. She is Trevelyan's henchwoman, and she is as beautiful as she is deadly. She likes to take out her targets by crushing them between her legs. She is played by Famke Janssen. The scheme. Janus plans to use a Soviet-era satellite weapon known as GoldenEye to generate EMPs. Trevelyan will steal money from the Bank of England, use an EMP to wipe out financial records to hide the theft, and thus destroy the economy of the UK. GoldenEye can also be used as a destructive weapon to obliterate targets on Earth. The girl, Natalia Simonova, is a computer programmer working at a satellite control center. When GoldenEye destroys the site, she survives the attack. She is played by Isabella Scorupco. How Bond wins. After escaping an attempt on their lives, Bond and Natalia team up and eventually make their way to Cuba. Boris had previously been traced to a location in the jungle there. Onatop attacks them and almost kills Bond before he is able to crush her in his own way. In the jungle, our 2 heroes locate a base hidden beneath a lake. When the water in the lake is drained, a large satellite dish is revealed, which is how Boris controls GoldenEye. Natalia hacks into the weapon's satellite and orders it to enter the atmosphere, where it will burn up and end the threat. Boris struggles to regain control, but Bond jams the satellite dish's gears, so it cannot move into position. Bond and Trevelyan fight on the dish's antenna, and Trevelyan falls and is severely injured, eventually being crushed by falling debris. In the meantime, Boris is frozen by liquid nitrogen and ceases to be. The ending. Bond and Natalia flee from the exploding base in a helicopter and land in a nearby field. They begin passionately kissing, but are interrupted by Jack Wade, a CIA agent played by a returning Joe Don Baker. We saw him in The Living Daylights as Baddie Whittaker. He reveals that the field the couple has been making out in is actually full of camouflaged soldiers. Bond scoops Natalia up in his arms and carries her towards their awaiting rescue. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? Not at the moment, no. They just got out of a helicopter. If so, is it on water? Nope. They are in a grassy field. The base was under a lake, though. Is there whoopee? This is similar to the ending of Thunderball. Bond and the girl are in the midst of being rescued, and there is no opportunity to become intimate. No whoopee here. Next up is 1997's Tomorrow Never Dies. The baddie. Elliot Carver is a media mogul wanting a monopoly on broadcasting. He is played by Jonathan Pryce. The scheme. Carver wants to start a war between the UK and China. He steals a communications decoder, which sends a false signal to a British warship and diverts it into Chinese waters. Carver then uses his stealth ship to sink the warship. His men use a missile from the warship to shoot down an investigating Chinese fighter plane, and then finish off the surviving British sailors using Chinese ammunition. A war between China and the UK has now been fully stoked. His endgame is to use a cruise missile obtained from the wreck of the British warship to destroy the Chinese government. The Chinese will blame the attack on Britain. His ally, General Cheng, played by Philip Kwok, will then take control of China. After Cheng negotiates a truce between the two countries, Carver will be granted exclusive broadcast rights in China for 100 years, making him a global broadcasting power. The girl. Wai Lin is a Chinese agent investigating the same case as Bond. She works for the Ministry of State Security and is played by Michelle Yeoh. How Bond wins. After some chases, escapes, and other misadventures, Bond and Wai Lin sneak aboard Carver's stealth ship to prevent him from firing the cruise missile at China. After Wai Lin is captured, Bond uses a grenade to damage the stealth ship enough that it is visible to radar and, thus, the Royal Navy. Bond dispatches Carver, sets the missile to explode, and escapes with Wai Lin as the stealth ship goes boom. The ending. Bond and Wai Lin float in the sea as naval vessels scan the waters for them with searchlights. Our heroes kiss passionately, not making a huge effort to be seen. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? Nope, it blew up. They are currently between vehicles. If so, is it on water? There is no vehicle, but I will give this a yes because they are in the water and floating on wreckage. Is there whoopee? I believe so, but it is impending. The ocean is rather chilly. This is not the Caribbean. Our next Bond adventure is The World Is Not Enough, released in 1999. The baddie. We have another duo. Bond's most direct adversary is Victor Renard Zokas, a terrorist who used to be an agent of the KGB. A bullet in his brain has shut off his ability to feel pain, and as it moves, it slowly turns off his other physical senses as well, and will kill him in the end. Revealed later in the film, spoilers here, is that his lover is Electra King, an oil heiress. She is the main motivator for Renard's activities. Renard is played by Robert Carlyle, and Electra is played by Sophie Marceau. The scheme. There are elements of familial revenge and greed, but the main scheme is to steal plutonium from a nuclear bomb, put it in the reactor of a nuclear submarine, to cause a meltdown, and destroy Istanbul. This would render Russia's oil pipeline in the area useless, allowing Electra's company's own pipeline, which goes around the affected area, to become more valuable. It is all about oil and money in the end. The girl. Dr. Christmas Jones is an American nuclear physicist. As the plot unfolds and plutonium gets involved, she aids Bond in his mission. Dr. Jones is played by Denise Richards. How Bond wins. After uncovering a lot of clues and surviving a lot of dangerous events, Bond and Jones are captured. Jones is taken to the submarine, and Bond is taken to a tower where he is tortured by Elektra. She fully reveals her role in the scheme, and before she can finish off our hero, allies arrive to free him, and he ultimately ends Elektra's existence. Bond makes his way to the submarine, which has just gotten underway. Bond dives in after it, gets on board, and rescues Jones. After impaling Renard with a rod of plutonium, foiling the plan to destroy Istanbul, Bond and Jones escape to the surface. The submarine explodes underwater, finishing Renard, although he probably didn't notice not having any feeling left. The ending. Bond and Jones spend a romantic evening in Istanbul, enjoying a sensual kiss. They adjourn to the bedroom and make love as MI6 satellites watch through walls and ceilings from above? Ooh. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? No. They were on a submarine a while before, but it went boom. If so, is it on water? Well, the submarine was underwater, but it doesn't matter, there is no vehicle here. Is there whoopee? Yes, very much so. Bond and Jones are visible in infrared as whoopee takes place, and we end the film watching their nude bodies banter and kiss as credits start to roll. Pierce Brosnan had signed a 3-picture deal with an option for a 4th. He agreed to make one more, which leads us to the final film of the Brosnan era, Die Another Day. There were 2 years between each of Brosnan's previous movies, but audiences had to wait 3 years for this 2002 release. The Baddie. 2 baddies juggle villain duties in this outing. We have Gustav Graves, who is actually Colonel Moon of North Korea, who has gone to great lengths to change his appearance and take on a new identity as a British entrepreneur. Graves is played by Toby Stephens, and his previous identity of Moon is played by Will Yoon Lee. Next, we have Miranda Frost, an MI6 operative who is also a double agent working with Graves. Frost is played by Rosamund Pike. The scheme. Graves has an orbital satellite, Icarus, that can direct solar energy onto specific areas on Earth to provide sunshine year-round to aid in agriculture. In actuality, Graves intends to use Icarus to carve a route through the heavily mined Korean demilitarized zone, so the North Korean military can invade the south and unify the peninsula. Graves has been funding his activities with a fortune in conflict diamonds that he previously gathered. The girl, NSA agent Giacinta Jinx Johnson, is working for the Americans on the same case as Bond. They start off at odds, but soon become allies, which is another familiar trope in Bond films. Jinx is played by Halle Berry. How Bond wins. After uncovering the scheme and dealing with some henchmen, Bond and Jinx follow Graves and Frost to Korea and stow away on a cargo plane. When Graves, who is really Colonel Moon, presents his Icarus-powered plan to his father, General Moon, his father rejects the plan, so Graves kills him. General Moon is played by Kenneth Tsang. A gunfight ensues, and the fuselage of the plane is punctured, forcing the plane to descend as it decompresses. We have a fist fight between the men, and a sword-knife fight between the women. Jinx takes out Frost, and Bond finishes Graves by pulling the cord on his parachute, sending Graves flying out of the plane and into one of its engines. Bond and Jinx escape from the plummeting cargo plane in a helicopter with the diamonds. The ending. We end the film with Bond and Jinx at a tiny Buddhist temple. Jinx is lying on her back, wearing only underwear, as Bond sprinkles diamonds over her body. As he works his way up, they kiss as credits roll. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? There's a helicopter outside, but they're not using it, so no. If so, is it on water? Nope. Everything is taking place in a tiny temple. Is there whoopee? Whoopee is present. This is a yes for impending whoopee. Let's check the tally for Part 3. Bases were destroyed in 3 films out of 4, and I'd say that bases are largely disappearing from Bond films in general. Bond ended the mission in a vehicle in no films out of 7. None at all. As for water, 2 films ended with Bond on water or in water with wreckage. I'm allowing that one. But watery endings in general have largely gone away. Bond was always with the girl, 7 films out of 7. But whoopee took place in only 6 films out of 7. This was because Jack Wade blocked Brosnan's Bond in his first outing. In the bonus section, again, main actors had their voices dubbed over in no films out of 7. This whole dubbing thing seems to have been a product of the Connery era. I wonder why they hired actors, sometimes choosing specific actors for the role, if they didn't intend to keep their real voice. I get it in You Only Live Twice, in a way, since that used Japanese performers, but even in the 1960s, I am sure the producers could have found actors who could already speak English in Japan. Oh well. It was harder to find characters with suggestive names this time around. I had to really stretch for some of these, but there are 2 that were obvious attempts to wink at the audience, and one of them was male. Fatima Blush. Nigel Small Fawcett, male. Rowan Atkinson. Lupe Lamora, Lamour. Xenia Onatop. This name was joked about in the film. Christmas Jones. Molly Warmflash. Peaceful Fountains of Desire, although this might be a translation of the character's actual name. I would say the suggestive naming trope has played itself out and is being poked fun at now. We are now ready to move on to Part 4, our final video, and look at the Daniel Craig reboot series. I will also add some more tropes and recurring plot devices I've noticed. Thanks for watching. See you next time.